America seems to be starting a very sad chapter in history. We are entering into a collective mental health crisis at the societal level, or more accurately described, we are entering into collective insanity of believing lies are information and information are lies. Survival is based on our ability to perceive our surroundings so that we may predict outcomes that increase our chances of avoiding harm. When that ability is diminished, if your eyes lie to you, you hear noises but nothing is there, fear increases, and fear diminishes our ability to work together. Instead, we run home and lock the door, so instead of working with our neighbors to produce great outcomes and increase our capability, we stay far away and begin to languish as individuals as our society starts to slowly decay. As we lose faith in information, in the absence of accurate information, we all return to the safety of our personally held beliefs, or as we describe them now, our personal truths. Of course, there will be a return to church, because it is not a rapidly changing institution. Of course, there will be a return to tribalism. If we cannot understand what is happening or what to do, we can find safety in seeking out those who think like we do, which furthers the division, ensures you will not be able to understand the flaws in your own thinking or the merits of thought that does not agree with your own, and by extension, removes the ability to empathize with anyone outside of the hive mind. Words must now be spelled out to avoid AI censors online now. I'm sure that if you don't create content, you probably are not aware of the extent of censorship. But if you're watching videos and people are replacing words or spelling words out, they are doing that in a direct response to having free speech and open communication between individuals taken down. The difference between censored TV and movies versus censoring regular people trying to communicate ideas, I hope is not lost on people. One is fake content provided for entertainment. The other is people trying to understand the world so that they can make it better. Because if you don't understand what is going on or what consequences might be the result of your actions, you have no hope of improving anything. You're more likely to destroy things accidentally through thoughtless actions. We learn the most from our mistakes. If we stop teaching about them because it's uncomfortable, if we are not self-criticizing, then we doom ourselves to repeat the same mistakes. You can only understand the flaws of thinking you do not agree with if you are willing to listen without emotion for long enough to grasp the detail of why, rather than talking over them with your own viewpoint. It is more effective to use your perspective on their points to show them why you have a different viewpoint about the exact same set of information, so you can explain why you arrive at a different conclusion, even though the two of you are reading the same source information. So, with that said, I've got a whole bunch of stuff pulled up, and let's just start going through it. So, this is a Reddit thread speaking about censorship. Censorship of ideas seen as horrible or aggressive in society makes those ideas more accessible and interesting to potential converts of whatever belief it may be. Freedom of expression and exchanging in engaging in rigorous debate and ridicule is the best tool against ideas we may see as regressive. That is not the way the establishment sees it, but in my opinion it does seem to be a very logical conclusion to arrive at. So again, we've already mentioned that there's certain words you can't say, so I'm just going to replace the word in this with bad people. So I believe that refusing to engage with bad people is more efficient than constantly platforming them. Yes, because engaging with them allows them to reach an audience they wouldn't otherwise, and helps legitimize them in the long run. It's the same reason I don't stop and debate every doomsday preacher I encountered, because they think that the same-sex marriage agenda will destroy the world. It is a belief worth entertaining. Not it is. Besides, it's quite possible to dismantle that kind of stuff without allowing these people a platform. That said, I don't believe bad people will disappear outright. I just believe that starving them of the attention they crave is the best way to deal with them. So this is a person that doesn't even want to know they exist. So they want to live in a world where if their children ask them about them, they don't understand the viewpoint of the others. They just want them to go away. They can't explain why these people believe something to their own child, and then further explain why their beliefs are flawed. Go through point by point and say this is what they believe in case you're exposed to it, in case you run into one. If I don't tell you about it and I just say it's all lies and BS and it's nonsense, don't engage with them, ignore them, and they'll go away. If they're over there talking with each other as they've been shunned from society and excluded so that they don't say these things to people that are going to debate them and push back, then they're going to form a whole bunch of propaganda that then your child accidentally gets exposed to and starts to question what you told them was all lies. Well, some of the points they make actually make sense to me. Not all of it, but it's not all lies. And as soon as that illusion is broken, then maybe out of ignorance they engage with it and they want to know more. Just like conspiracy theories or anything else. When you find out that a portion of what you thought you knew was a lie, I think you'd have to be crazy not to wonder, well, what else is a lie? It's human instinct to start to try to understand, oh, okay, am I getting the wrong information? Can I understand things better? I am very confused. I don't understand everything. I would like to have information that helps me understand what's going on. And if there are these groups of people that are self-isolated and they truly believe these things, then when people come in contact with those groups, then they get a different version of reality than the safe collective establishment is giving out. And that is where the cracks start to form. If you don't let people speak ignorance and let people hear ignorance so that it can be explained as to why this is not how we do things and this is the flaw in their argument, and you can do that with almost anything, including the criticism of our current system and the current establishment. Not only are we suppressing the debate of bad people, we're suppressing the debate against supposed good people in order to continue the illusion that there are no problems inside our current system. There has never been a human system that does not have problems. We are not capable of creating utopia. That is not even what this place is. This place is a place where evil things happen every day, good things happen every day, and we must find balance. Simply living is coping with all that and not understanding a thing. But survival is understanding what the threats are, what things work, what things don't, and trying to move closer to doing a good job instead of just doing whatever's in front of you. It's individual thought. It's critical thinking. It is responding to threats. It is recognizing progress and growth. Leaning into good things and pushing bad things to the side, but not censoring them. You cannot ban things like drugs or books or words or ideas and expect them to go away. All you are doing is pushing them into the darkness where the light may not shine on them to uncover the truth. You're allowing rot to grow in the darkness by behaving this way. This has been tried under dictators, under kings. The easiest thing to do was to kill people, to silence people, to create consequences for thinking the wrong way. And where are we now? Do we have kings? Do we have monarchies? Do we have dictatorships? For the most part, no. We have moved to societal government, collective governing and representing the people and letting the people breathe and think and do things instead of be suppressed and told what to do and told not to think and told not to have criticisms of the process. The crucible of criticism is how things get better. And if we can't talk, then things can't get better. And as things get worse, violence gets more likely of all types. Verbal, there's violence, there's financial violence. There's verbal violence, making people feel bad about themselves because they don't think the right way. We used to shun people when they wouldn't cooperate. If they were a thief, if they were undermining the system and ruining the trust in the community, they would be shunned. That is a form of violence because you're sending them out into the wilderness to be exposed to the dangers on their own. They no longer have the protection of other human beings. They've been effectively killed while still alive. Nobody recognizes them. No one wants to help them. No one wants to talk to them. They are on their own. And then this is Quora. I know this is, we're just trying to understand what people are thinking. And these are just some examples. There's plenty more if you want to look for yourself. Don't believe everything I say. I'm just trying to discuss things and maybe get some interest in trying to understand why are these certain older beliefs starting to show some signs of resurgence in society. Could it be that we are returning to tribalism and personally held beliefs right now because we can't trust the information we're getting from the corporate media establishment? We don't seem to be able to trust the information we're getting from the government. There's a lot of things going on that don't make sense, and we are not provided with explanations that fix that. Instead, we're told to move on and shown a new story. Because our collective ADD means that whatever's happening today diminishes more important things that happened yesterday, and we forget about them. They'd like that to continue. They don't want you to stop and slow down and say, wait a minute, there might be a core problem here that we should really maybe take a look at and stop just forgetting it like it's no big deal because it happened yesterday. So this person believes that censorship has been directed at suppressing the truth. Censorship has always been truth suppression in one form or another. When you censor thoughts and opinions, you are choosing for everyone else what you feel they should be allowed to hear. When you look at it this way, censorship is the very pinnacle of arrogance and narcissism. Even with the most vile and disgusting forms of speech, with the exception of calling others to engage in dangerous or illegal activities, there are things to be learned and opportunities to expand one's own knowledge. This in no way means that you have to like or even agree with what's being said, but there is a certain wisdom in listening. I, for one, absolutely cannot stand racists of any sort. However, I will not call for their hate speech to be silenced, again, unless it directly calls for murdering or harming others, and will actually defend their right to be heard. The reasons are simple and should be common sense. Number one, the enemy you know is almost better than the one you don't. Is almost always better than the one you don't. If my neighbor is a member of a racial hate group, I would rather know about it so I can avoid them than have them forced underground and only discover it when something happens and it's too late. Banning certain types of speech never makes the attitude behind it go away. It simply drives an underground It drives it underground, hidden and festering. Number two, who exactly defines acceptable speech, and exactly which standards do they use to apply this standard? If you think it's okay or necessary to ban speech because you find it offensive or disagreeable, what happens when inevitably you say something others find offensive and disagreeable? If you cannot stand up for the rights of those you dislike or do not agree with, how can you expect those who dislike, or disagree with you to stand up for you? There's a difference between hate speech and speech that you hate. I would say the other thing that will happen when you run into this opposing point of view that you hate, you are only able to evaluate it on an emotional basis. You actually have very little foundation in being able to provide a counter debate, because you can't even stand to listen to it long enough to understand it and be able to engage with this person and say, this is why I disagree with you, and here's the facts that I look at about the same topic that lead me to a very different conclusion about why the outcome of doing it your way is going to be more harmful for all of us in the long run than doing it this way. And here's the reason that I think this is going to produce a better outcome. This is how we work together. If you can't show up to work and understand the rules and conditions for success, what you need to do to be able to engage with other people and accomplish a goal that requires more than one human being to get it done, if you can't work with others, if you can't engage with them and debate and come up with a better process to make this happen, then it will either happen slowly or not at all, because you're unable to convince others of why your carefully thought out plan is a good idea. It seems pretty simple to me. I can't believe that I'm actually kind of saying this out loud, because it just seems so logical. If you just operate from emotion, how are you ever going to get better? If you feel fear or anger about something, how are you ever going to be able to cope with it? You're not. You're just going to withdraw farther and farther away from it, thus widening the divide between the two of you to the point where eventually you don't even want to be part of the same group of people anymore, because these people are horrible. They're the most terrible people who have ever existed. And what happens after you get to this mindset? War. W-A-R. Another possibly banned word. There's a big list we're going to get into. Hundreds of words that AI has been set upon to prevent from spreading. I don't think this has to do with intentional truth suppression as such, but online media is involved in a suppression of complexity suppression, which may be far worse because it occurs more insidiously. For instance, consider how the algorithm developed for the sake of social media suppressed extended dialogue as well as erasing those tones which could be more angry and irate. This sort of suppression oversimplified our reality to make it seem that so long we were being nice and friendly, it is all right with the world. It isn't. So if you talk to your neighbors and your neighbors feel a certain way, your neighbors just want to have a good family, raise their kids, be able to afford their house, groceries, things like that. But then you go online where these things are being manipulated and everybody is rabidly progressive. No, the family unit is terrible. It was started by the patriarchy. Men want to have women that are subservient to them as mothers. They want to lead the family as the father figure. It's terrible and it's toxic and it's awful. So this is what you get online, but then your neighbors don't seem to exhibit these same ideas. So it becomes very confusing, because in the online world you start to think, wow, this world is leaving me behind. The views are changing so quickly that I, I have to give up everything that I thought was good in order to move along forward with this group who is, everything is changing so rapidly. I'm trying to understand what's going on, and it's not reflected on Main Street in my town. This is exactly what this person is trying to say. The discussion is the same, but the most extreme viewpoints are being held at the top above all the people who are simply saying, can we just get along? Can we just agree that we disagree on things but still be able to go to work and cooperate? Can we agree that even if we don't really want the same political candidates, we would like the same outcome of things getting better for Americans of all beliefs and all skin colors and all genders? Can we do that? Because it doesn't seem like we're able to do that at the moment. We'd rather fight with other regular people than fight together to hold those in positions of leadership and those who have power accountable for actions which may cause harm on a much grander scale. You've got children on these wonderful social media platforms, supposedly, that are suffering from depression and anxiety because the feedback that they're getting from this online world is so negative and is driving them, oh, well, if you hate this, you should go join this group. And in both cases, they're talking about the extremes, not the center collective where people are willing to engage with people. These are people who are actively trying to start conflict, and this is what you get from online. So you're putting children into a situation that is confusing enough for adults who hopefully have some understanding of who they are and what they believe. When you're a child, you're trying to form these things, and if they are formed out of extremist information, then we are indoctrinating our own culture with propaganda from both sides and further inciting division. I mean, it seems very simple to me. So, society has a trust problem. More censorship will only make it worse. I think that if you've been following along so far, I think this should be starting to make sense. And, you know, the documentaries that have been put out about the leader of Germany in the 1930s. There's been so many documentaries because people even today find it so hard to grasp how people got on board with this agenda so quickly. And if after the sickness that we had a few years ago, where everybody jumped on board with questionable science, brand new ideas, brand new solutions to a problem that had recently discovered, how many people jumped on that bandwagon without question? And not only did they believe it, but they started parroting what they were being told to others, and they started attacking people who did have questions. Questions became a bad thing because they didn't have real, reliable answers that were based in study over a period of time. These were guesses that were put out by people in power, by people with platforms and reach and a loud voice, and how many people jumped on that bandwagon right away. So the analogy would be that in Germany, this person came to the public and produced a narrative. This person said, there's a group of people that control the banks in our country, there's a group of people that control the economy and the business in our country, and these people, while the nation is suffering from having to rebuild Europe from WW1, and we've printed our money into staggering inflation where we're using it to light our fireplaces because the newspaper cost more than the currency, he was able to tell a story that people quickly adopted, believed, bought into, and became invested in. And just like here, where the government didn't have to pay people to tell on their neighbors for not doing the right thing, they didn't have to pay people in Germany for regular citizens to tell on their own neighbors about who was hiding people, which houses had the wrong type of people inside them, which type of people were not going along with this collective agenda. People betrayed their neighbors for their own sense of self-importance because they felt like they were working toward some sort of a greater good, as they were being told by people in these positions of authority. So I think that one of the reasons there's so many documentaries surrounding this leader of 1930s Germany is because there's still a confusion and a lack of understanding, even to this day, as to how this could have happened. And it continues, even after we just watched something that I would say you could draw some very clear similarities between the people that were supporting this push to make you take something that hadn't been properly vetted into your body voluntarily, rather than risking getting it through the chaos of fate and entropy that just occurs naturally in the universe. If you go outside, you may come in contact with someone who has a cold. And by doing so, by going out into public around people that may have colds, you may also catch a cold. I mean, are we not going to live our lives anymore when someone in a position of importance tells us, oh, there's danger outside? Everyone stay inside. I mean, what if they said, oh, actually, we found out that cars are much more dangerous than we thought. Everybody needs to stop driving. I mean, as crazy as that concept sounds, I think that with the right propaganda and with the right information being released with enough belief in it, people would park their cars and say, okay, I'm going to stay home, be a good person. I'm not going to be driving out on the road, potentially leading to some sort of harm to others. I'm a good person. And in addition, if I see someone driving, I'm going to report them and make sure that they get taken off the road because they are evil. I'm good and they are evil. So betraying them and turning them over to the authorities is an act of goodness, not an act of treason, not an act of restricting the freedom of others in a free country. No, no, this is good. This is good restriction. This is good censorship. We want more of this. And this seems to be what is bought into right now. So we can also make comparisons to 1930s Germany and people that support censorship, or people that support questionable ideas and are aggressively making sure they get rolled out. Even if they're not getting paid, they're doing it just for the privilege of being a good person and feeling that little bump of dopamine from that self-importance that they get. So they cite people who were questioning of the solution to the sickness that happened a couple years ago, and they're saying that the discussion about these questions, even if you shut down Facebook tomorrow, would not go away. We don't have a misinformation problem, we have a trust problem. It's fine if there's misinformation out there, but if we have a good understanding of what the truth actually is, that misinformation can be allowed to exist, and people can understand that it is bad information. Because the good information, the Holy Bible, which is an unchanging document, or the Constitution, which is an unchanging document, are allowed to exist to keep us on a steady and straight path. Living documents can be manipulated by people who want to make changes, and you can very easily lose your course. This is why we navigate off the North Star, an unchanging star, and not one of the other ones that we constantly have to figure out where exactly it is. If you do not have an unchanging target or an unchanging set of morals, virtues, beliefs, then it becomes whatever people want it to be. And you can very quickly lose your way, lose your grasp on the truth, and be led in any direction, even the exact opposite direction of where you thought you were going. So if they did shut down Facebook, it would actually be better than the current system we have, where they keep it running, but they make sure to manipulate it. If they shut down Facebook and all the other social media platforms, people would be forced to return to actual public square, public discussion, face to face, without these systems of engaging with each other over social media and over these devices, where the information can be manipulated by the owners of the ecosystem, the Apple who owns the device, and the owners of the application loaded on the device that goes in your pocket and you carry with you everywhere you go, and you pull out hundreds of times to look at, as it notifies you about the important things to look at and the words that you should be reading or the videos that you should be watching. You are being manipulated. When you have that phone on you or around you, you are being manipulated by this piece of technology at all times. So maybe once in a while it wouldn't be a bad idea to leave it at home. You don't need to have that on you at all times. You don't need to take a phone call at all times. On the weekends, you can leave the house without it, and you're going to be okay. So, another belief that is returning, why public intellectuals are more openly expressing belief in God. Well, that is an interesting turn of events, isn't it? Because for the longest time, I was born in 1985, and I feel like I've been seeing it diminish over time pretty consistently. Only recently, I would say, after the smartphone rolled out in around 2008 and really became mass adopted, and you really had a proper computer in your pocket at all times, I would say that is the inflection point. That is where the graph starts to go the other way, because this is where all the problems have started. All the manipulation of the flow of information started, and people have slowly started to divest themselves from institutions that are established, like science, like the government, like the media. And as people lose their ability to trust these factual organizations that were sold to you as better than belief, well, as they get changed and manipulated by the fact that they have to generate profits in all cases. So you've got media that no longer is trying to generate profit by giving you truth. They're trying to generate profit through ad revenue by giving you sensationalism, whether it's true or not. If you're willing to click on it and say, wow, I just read that. Is that true? That's so crazy. Now I gotta keep looking at it. That's driving your engagement and thus driving their bottom line, because you have to watch those ads during that video. So all these institutions have been corrupted by the underpinnings of the way that our economy and capitalism is currently running, unrestricted by the government, unregulated by the government, because you used to have small corporations that were governed by large nations, large national governments, and now you have global corporations that governments are grappling, nations are grappling with how to try and regulate these things that operate all over the globe, and yet they only operate in one little tiny corner of it. So in a lot of cases, corporations can choose to ignore regulation. They just withdraw from that market. Okay, I'm not willing to comply with your regulations. I don't really need that stream of revenue. I'm just going to choose to withdraw. I'm going to choose to remove my service from your country until you change the laws, because I'm unwilling to do what you want me to do. And that is a huge problem in my estimation. So I have been seeing this more and more. This is just one article about it. Sean Ryan, um, Peterson, Dr. Peterson. Um, there's been multiple examples of people that I would not expect to be talking about a return to the belief in God who are. And it also stems from a mistrust of scientific data because scientists need funding from somewhere. And if the money doesn't want to fund impartial research, if the money wants to fund a study to prove that a drug is safe, or to prove any number of things, that scientist understands that their science is hopefully going to result in a conclusion that benefits the donor that funded all of their research. So in some cases you do have flawed science. Now, if the scientific process works and their peers are critical of a study that they publish and it gets tested by other independent people who also manage to get funding to verify the results and double check that, then you have good science. But if you just have a study that is put out and there's no funding to challenge it, then you just have science that is put in front of you. It is untested. It is a hypothesis. It is not a thesis. It has not been tested to be provable by more than one group of scientists who may or may not have had an intrinsically sound scientific method that was free of bias and free of error. And when you start to believe that the information that you're getting is misinformation, then you start to wonder if the stuff that is being put out and you are told is misinformation is actually true. So it seems, in my opinion, it seems to be a pretty logical outcome. There should be no surprise that as you lose access to truth, you return to the safety of beliefs that you had already established based on information from a time previous that you could still believe in. You just have to throw everything from 2010 and beyond, you got to throw it out the window and just return to a time where the media was still putting out truth, where you still believed that the government was being somewhat honest, where science wasn't being corrupted by the underlying money stream that funds that operation. And then, of course, you're going to get an article like this, where people are recognizing that there's a return to Christianity occurring. People are becoming regressive. They're going back to things that they'd already established as being good, but they had departed from because they felt like that there were better options with more truth in them, more information in them that they felt was useful. And once they lose that faith, then they return to the faith of their core beliefs. So I'm a little bit curious why they think this is so dangerous. Christianity, other than the Crusades, is not a religion that promotes violence. They promote acceptance while also standing on their core beliefs and saying, we don't really agree with these things, but we're willing to accept everybody. We're willing to be peaceful and cooperative with everybody. But apparently, according to them, it's the single biggest threat to America's religious freedom. So, yeah, they're going to go through and talk about the fact that they don't agree with some of the more progressive ideals that have been recently mass adopted very quickly, with people not maybe understanding the full long-term consequences. I think I'm a libertarian. I think everybody should be allowed to do what they want as long as they're not harming other people. The government shouldn't get involved. These people do not agree with that. They believe that religion needs to be regulated in some way because we can't allow this Christian nationalism. It is the biggest threat to our freedom of religion in this country, and it needs to be attacked. That's what this article is trying to get you to believe. Um, they're saying that they hate other religions. They're saying Christian nationalism undergirds a number of threats to religious freedom, including anti-Muslim, anti-Semitism, and government-sponsored religion. Government-sponsored religion. Okay, is the government sponsoring the Christian church? Whatever your religious beliefs are, you should be allowed to espouse them in public and not be judged by other people. And if you start to single out a group, that's where it starts. And then you just add more groups to the ones that are bad. Once you discriminate against one group, you've established the mechanism for discrimination. And then they're saying, oh, some of these people used it as an excuse not to get the cure for the thing, the sickness. People got out of that by using their religious freedom, because just your personal freedom wasn't enough, of course. Anyway, that's the concept. And then another theory that's returning, the flat earth theory. And again, if you lose faith in science, maybe you have some beliefs that come from a religious document like the Bible that says something that has never changed. And this new change of what we say that the world is then called into question because you stop believing in these. If you're told 100 pieces of information and you find out that 10 of them are false, you may start to question the other 90 pieces of information you were fed during your education, that you were told this is the data, this is how everything is supported. Maybe those 90 things were absolutely true, but because they felt they needed to lie about 10 certain topics that were an inconvenient truth for them, then you start to question, well, now I don't know. Now I can't trust the other 90 things that I was told. And the funny thing is these articles are just focusing on the scientific evidence that supports the flat earth stuff and what these people are looking at scientifically that leads them to the conclusion that the earth is flat, when that's not even really what the flat earth belief resurgence is about. The flat earth resurgence is about a lack of belief in science and a lack of belief in the government education system and a lack of belief in the information that we get from media sources and governmental institutions like NASA. It's not about the actual evidence that shows that the earth is flat. It's about the fact that they've caught lies in the information that is put out by the people that tell you that the earth is a globe and it rotates around in space and the galaxy is spiraling inside the universe and we're traveling thousands of miles, and people are like, well, I did believe that when I felt like I could trust those who were telling me these things, and as soon as I didn't feel that I could trust them anymore, you started to return to this fringe society dedicated to insisting that the earth is flat. Has given rise to a modern ground of flat earth adherence. They cite the fact that the pictures put out by NASA are almost always put out with a disclaimer, this is an artist's rendition. There's some level of Photoshop and manipulation on those photos. So why can't we see the source data? What is it about the source data that needs to be photoshopped or manipulated? Or why do we need an artist to render this when clearly we are capable of producing film on the surface of the moon? You watch them get out of the space capsule, you watch them drive the buggy around on the surface of the moon. So why, when India lands, is it an artistic rendering of what happened? Why do we not have cameras that can transmit from the moon? Are we not able to broadcast that signal back to Earth and show the people what we're doing on the moon all these different countries land on the surface of it, it doesn't make sense. So then people stop looking into, well, wait, what are the merits of flat Earth? No, they look at that and they say, okay, this seems to be fake. So I'm starting to lose the belief in all of this, and I'm going to go back to my faith. I'm going to go back to what I learned when I read the Bible when I was a child or whenever that happened. It's about the lies. It's not about the merits of the argument behind the flat earth movement. And that's what these articles, the return of the flat earth, the grandfather of conspiracy theories, She said she initially thought they were a joke because how could anyone believe anything so ludicrous? To find out, she entered the world. The underlying premise behind the conspiracies is that they are hiding the truth for shady, nefarious purposes. But you are so smart, special, or have access to such privileged information, you can see things as they really are. So you see things as they really are in the sense that you are being lied to by the system. And even if the underlying information about flat Earth also can't be proven, you reach a point where, okay, both things might not be true. I don't know which it is. It just becomes a choice. I choose to reject the establishment altogether, and I'm going into the fringes. I'm going into the conspiracy theories. I'm going back to God because I've lost trust in the people on Earth who are supposed to be in charge of running this thing in a manner that is sensible and understandable so that we can all decide to work together because we're not arguing about whether the earth is round or flat. If you show up to work and you spend the first 2 hours debating flat earth versus round earth, you're not doing your job because you're having a disagreement about something that you want to tell the other side you're being lied to by the government and NASA, and then they're like, "Are you crazy? What are you talking about?" No one's getting anything done. And it's this type of argument that's going to go nowhere. Neither side is going to be convinced of, oh, my political belief is wrong. Okay, I'm going to your side. Because there's so much lying going on. Some of it is intentional. Some of it's not intentional. It's people who are legitimately confused. I don't think these people are doing this to purposely be harmful. They're not putting this out to try and corrupt the world and cause the downfall of the stock market and, to overthrow the government. We're going to use the flat earth movement. That's not what this is. This is confusion. Misinformation is eroding the public's confidence in democracy. The last time we voted together for the leader of America, I can't even say any of those words, and there were questions about what happened, and there were people that went to the Capitol a few years ago now. That's all just a big lie, and we should forget about it. There was nothing weird that went on. Just move on, just forget about it. And by not getting an explanation, you further entrench people in their beliefs. When there's no good information that can clearly tell you what actually happened, when there was no second look, third look, whatever was needed to bring some unity to the country, no. It was suppressed as a rebellion, and we're supposed to move on and forget that it ever happened. 64%, NPR's survey found that 64% of the American populations believes that U.S. democracy is in crisis and risk of failing. 70% of respondents said democracy is more at risk of failure now than it was a year ago. 76% of respondents think political instability within the country is a bigger danger to the United States than external adversaries, and yet we are not working on unifying this country. We continue with the political system to go on with the extremist views of the left and the right while sending money to foreign nations, even though 76% of Americans believe that the biggest threat is here at home with the way that our country is running. And then you wonder why the people continue to lose faith in the government's ability to make seemingly responsible decisions to lead us into a better place than we are right now. People are just walking away from the entire system. Some people don't even want to vote. What's the point? One of the drivers is the explosion of misinformation deliberately aimed at disrupting our process. Maybe we should focus on strengthening our resilience to foreign actors manipulating our system. I don't know. Instead of just yelling and screaming about it and sending money to war zones and declining peace deals that are offered by the large nation to the north of Ukraine that recently offered peace terms and we rejected them instead of counter offering and saying, hey, those are unreasonable, but we'd accept this. No. Keep sending hundreds of billions of dollars. Keep it so people are dying. Keep it so that bombs are being bought. Keep the whole system going as it is. The endless wars. Yeah. People ask, why do we need these endless wars? And they don't get good information, and they don't get a good answer on why this is necessary, or they don't believe the answer. And they're just supposed to move on and accept it and become supporters of endless wars that don't make sense. That is going to work great. That is a great way for the government to instill more trust. 57% of white Americans believe there was fraud in 2020. 30% of African Americans, 38% of Latinos also believe there were fraud. Anyway, the rest of it is just trying to debunk all this and make it go away. So that's a waste of time. Just trying to tell you, hey, it's all fake. It's all fake. Ignore it. Ignore it. You're crazy. Journalism has been failing. Journalism is not telling us the truth. If you think that journalists are telling you the truth, then that's where I'd start. If you're getting all your information from liars, then that's probably the first place to start. Go try to find some diversity in sources. Go find some smaller. Instead of taking one big one and believing it, go find a few smaller ones and use them as aggregators against each other to figure out if everybody's telling a different lie, or if suspiciously everybody's telling the same lie suspiciously well. There should be some diversity. There should be some disagreement between sources, not just the truth on the left and the truth on the right disagreeing with each other. There should be diversity in the middle there, where you can extract actual information and try to get an actual understanding of what are the big lies on the left and the right. And then let's get into the censorship. So they're starting to block prompt words. And the first person claims that serpentine, hippogriff, and dragon watercolor were blocked from the prompt. This person is saying that they got 2 prompts blocked as well. My prompt was basically just asking for cute flowers and landscapes. There was nothing inappropriate about it. I got 3 non-dog warnings in a row. Non-dog warnings. I guess I'm not in the know exactly about this. It only gets spicy after 5 to 6 non-dogs, but at some point they give you a 24-hour ban. Just put in the still life of the most boring thing imaginable, painted with the vigor and excitement of a puppy dog. That gives you a successful render to break the combo. So, they're censoring things like that. Of course, they're censoring. Let's see. So a lot of these art generators are banning different words than the large language models. Oh, OpenAI has. Okay, they have categories, but they don't have the actual words. So sexual words, words relating to trans life people who don't want to identify with living anymore are censored. In this case, there's a much more comprehensive list. This is another post about work of artifice against algorithmic censorship. This person is complaining about sexual words being censored via AI. There is a list. Where is it? Okay, so this is a more comprehensive list. This has a couple hundred words that are banned in Midjourney. Anything related to gore, anything related to adult sexuality, anything relating to body parts, anything relating to clothing state, indicating the absence of clothing, taboo words, bad people, people who are hateful, can't put those words in. Relating to substances that alter your mental state. Certain leaders' names. Bowel movements. Harming people. Body fluids. Deepfake. Censored. Even censored spelled wrong. Inappropriate. Surgery. So, as someone who's been trying to put up, you know, videos relating to some of the things going on in the world, I've experienced this censorship firsthand, including a C-SPAN video that's free use, where European Parliament was discussing a resolution to better cope with another worldwide sickness, where there was a central governing body who could dictate the responses of nations. You didn't have one nation that had their nightclubs open, like Sweden, and then another nation that is completely locked down only a few hundred miles away. They want some continuity in decision making that removes the sovereign nationality of each individual nation, as long as the conditions of there being a worldwide dangerous contagion going around. As long as those conditions are met, then the national sovereignty should be overridden by this central body that can dictate the response during the emergency, and it certainly would never be used beyond that. Certainly wouldn't be dragged out for a couple years, even after we started to see that it really wasn't producing the dramatic outcome that everybody was so afraid of, the end of the world, the end of everything. So there's also similar revivals going on in other first world countries. It also seems to be really weird that if you look at the NATO countries, we all seem to be going through this together, almost like there's an overriding body that's bringing us all together and pushing the same agenda inside these countries, maybe through technology, maybe through the devices that we all carry in the first world. The newest, latest devices that have all the capabilities, and you have access to all the information supposedly on the face of it. I mean, if you want to believe that you have free access to the truth because you have the latest iPhone that just came out, and people that don't have that will never have access to the truth, I think you're thinking about things a little bit backwards, because these devices are used to curate the content that you are allowed to see, while you are at the same time thinking that you have free access to it, when the people in Africa, oh, those poor people, they don't have access to all the information that I have. Well, oddly enough, the civil strife inside those countries, as long as they're not at war, as long as they had a pre-existing functioning government where everybody's not just dying by default because no one can get along. If those countries have been functioning okay, they seem to be continuing to function okay. The family unit in those countries seems to not be looked at as a bad thing. Having privately held religious beliefs doesn't seem to be criticized as being stupid in those places. It's your personal belief. You're allowed to have that. But it seems like in the first world countries, we're all being told that your personally held beliefs are ignorant unless they agree with the group thought, the collective hive mind of what we all supposedly believe now, which is the truth. Or at the very least, it's the personal truth of the collective, and we all need to buy into it. When I was a decade ago, I quit traveling the world for work in around 2010. Actually, a little bit after, it was more like 2014. Back in those days when I'd go to some of these poorer countries, I used to think, man, they just don't have everything that we have. America is definitely better. Last year I took a trip to Grenada, and when I was there, I saw the community functioning the way I remember America, where people could talk about things they disagreed with. They could have public political debates at a coffee shop. In fact, I got involved in one and just gave my 2 cents because they were having this conversation. Nobody got mad. Nobody said that the other person deserved to get some incurable sickness. Nobody said, I hope all your children don't prosper and potentially have even worse things happen to them. There was no emotional response. It was just recognition of problems in the world and a few human beings discussing their thoughts on it. And they still have close family ties. They still have big families. Those people are still having children in the third world. But in America, we've prioritized money and career. You can do that family thing in your 30s. Why don't you just have fun and work really hard in your 20s? Just lean into self-indulgence. Don't develop any discipline. Don't develop any core beliefs. Just go out and get drunk and go find somebody for the night or the week or whatever and just have fun, and then show up to work and do a good job and get promoted. And then when you're 30, you won't regret any of that. You won't wonder why, as an individual, squandering your money and just having fun now that you're 30 and you want to settle down, why you don't have money saved up for a house. And certainly why you didn't start building something in your early 20s with someone else, pooling your incomes so that you can really afford to save, renting a place together, and putting yourself in a position so that when you are in your late 20s, you've had this goal together. We want to have a child. We want to have a safe place to bring them into where they can grow and develop and feel safe. And we're going to spend our 20s working really hard together to make sure that we can make that happen when we're in our 30s. No, people just want to have fun and do all the wrong things, not figure out any sort of discipline for themselves, just do whatever feels good. And then when they're 30 and they wake up and say, oh, I guess this isn't really a sustainable way to live, just doing whatever I want and not building any relationships with anybody, not working with anybody, just being selfish, whatever I want, who cares, I'm just going to get what I want. But you can multiply your ability to get something done the more people that you have on your team. So you can further multiply your ability to do things if you have a bunch of children. This is why farmers used to have 10, 12 kids with their wife, because just him and her trying to make that whole farm run was not an easy task. It's doable, but it is exhausting. So if you have 12 children, as they start to grow, they start to be able to help run the farm, increase your ability to produce things, increase your ability to get work done, because the family is empirically a good thing. Building social relationships with other people is a good thing. Making a plan with other people and having a collective vision and working and leveraging all your effort into creating this one much grander outcome is a great thing, in spite of the fact that they tell you that it's not. And don't get me wrong, I know it's hard out there for people right now. It's hard to make enough money to live. It's certainly hard to make money enough to save up and get a house and do all these things. So that's not, I'm not saying that not making these decisions early enough is the full weight of the blame. But if you recognize that there is an affordability problem and you want to make it more likely that you're going to have a family and prosper, I would say the sooner that you can find someone suitable that wants to work with you, that wants to love you, that cares for you, that's invested in you and you're invested in them, then the sooner that you increase your capability to thrive in even a challenging environment like we find ourselves in today. Let's see this one last page. Yeah, rumblings of revival. This is what I'm starting to understand may be the case, is Gen Z may be the generation that returns to spiritual discipline, to family, to understanding that there's good and evil in the world and your choices matter. Because they don't remember a time when the world worked like I do, you know? I do remember a time when the world appeared, from my perspective, to be working fairly well. People seem to be in some level of harmony. I mean, in the 90s, you could join the military and get your GI Bill without risking your life. You weren't going to be sent over into a sandbox to fight over oil or terrorism or whatever the buzzword they want to use is. There was a time where we were getting along. We could talk about things. We could make jokes without people getting offended and calling for people to be shunned from society and to lose their job and to be starved and punished and all these things. And it is my true belief that just like a pendulum, the stock market goes up and down. If you zoom out to the 50-year chart, you see that clearly. It doesn't always go up. Belief and lack of belief and tyrannical government and freedom, these are all pendulums that have been swinging for thousands of years. As you reach the apex of your swing, you start to swing back the other way. And some people would argue that it's better to be in a place like communist China where they kind of prevent that pendulum from even starting to swing. They just keep it where they want it, through government control and through harming people and silencing people and jailing people and keeping a very tight grip on the discussion. Censorship is very prevalent inside China. But if you want to allow people freedom, you're going to get this pendulum swing. So look at where the pendulum is now and look at how crazy far it is away from center. And just understand that eventually that will start to swing back, even if you don't want it to. The new generation who tries to go out and get into the workforce and starts actually seeing, okay, where does my paycheck line up against my expenses? Where does my paycheck line up against the idea of buying a house? Oh, well, I'm just going to give up because those two things are so far away that we need to make a massive change to even put me in a place where I can believe that if I go to work and I do a good job, I'm going to be compensated in a manner where I too can participate in the idea of the American dream that the world over has been talked about as the pinnacle of life on earth, living in America in a free place where you can have your own land and have your own family and be free to believe the things you want to believe and not believe the things that you don't. So I think that there is a big swing coming. I really do. And I hope that we can do this peacefully because we are on a razor's edge of popping off into violence, whether that's violence inside our own nation or whether that's violence with other countries because of the military-industrial complex demanding more and more profits in perpetuity on a finite planet with finite resources. It just doesn't make any sense. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you got something out of this. If you stayed this long, you are a trooper. I will see you again sometime soon.